I didn't ask for this role. I was sitting in my chambers at the Inns of Court, and along comes my father and tells me they need a scribe at the Tower of London. I should have slipped out sooner. I should have hidden in the privy. My master at the Inns of Court is not best pleased, but my father is a judge, so what can he say?
Just come along with paper and ink and what have you. They need a record made. There will be ambassadors present and things must be seen to be done properly. You're educated, you're almost a lawyer, you'll do.
Can't someone else go, Father? I'm studying for my examination.
Don't speak to anyone, you're there to write. Be seen and not heard. In fact, try not to be seen either.
Yes, but...
It's a great opportunity.
A great opportunity to be invisible. I'm used to being ignored. Sitting in a corner, that's my job, and frankly, it is as well to be invisible in these dangerous days. No, I didn't ask for this role. On peril of my life and soul, I did not and would not choose to be a witness to these events. Too much hangs on them, and I am a young man and as yet a virgin, and I'd rather not die before I'd walked in the garden. I say this as one who was on the point of taking holy orders. I didn't. I'm still not sure what stopped me. I wanted to have influence in the world, I think.
Thomas More?
Father!
Get yourself some decent clothes.
Decent clothes?
And leave off the hair shirt.
Do you think anyone will be watching what I wear? You told me I should be invisible.
The clothes make the man, Thomas. You must give up the hair shirt. It gives the wrong impression.
Why would my hair shirt even be noticed?
Besides, if you want to walk in the garden, you won't win fair lady with your mortified flesh. Ask your mother.
To mortify the flesh is to remember to repent.
And it is also to remind the king of his own conscience, Thomas. You and your hair shirt must not prick the conscience of the king. We live in dangerous days. You must view what happens as a trial.
A trial, Father?
A kind of trial upon which the fate of this land may well depend. So have a care, Thomas. It's not your place to wonder, Thomas. Stick to the facts.
We are a little short on facts, Father.
The task in hand?
Where we don't have facts, where there is a mystery, rumour rushes in to fill in the blank space where the truth might be. And we live in God-fearing times. Fearing God means that murdering children is damnation, and their deaths unavenged mean that the king's reign is cursed, and the country's peace is fragile as a bird's egg. We are all caught between God Almighty and a terror of a return to war. There have been pretenders before, but none like this one. The one the crowned heads of Europe say they believe. The one the people of Ireland recognize. The one with gold robes and all the airs of a prince. And the people of England want to believe it. They need to believe it.
I am the king.
The lost children have become the conscience of the country.
I am the king.
Their silence is loud. Their stillness rocks the land.
I am the king.
The king always knew that a reckoning will come. And now it has come.
I am the king.
They've caught him and brought him to the Tower of London. So it's judgment time. And I am almost a lawyer, and I've got to make a proper record of all that happens.
I am the king.
The future of the king's rule, the future of this island nation are in the balance. No pressure then.
I am the king.
So, I'm off to the Tower of London. This is a bare room, cold as stone. Small, high windows, so no one on the outside would even know we're here. A screen across one end of the room, perhaps an attempt to contain some warmth, except there isn't any warmth to contain. Chairs, a table, dark, heavy. Writing desk, high, cramped, with a high stool beside it. That's my place, right over by the window. Should have brought a cushion. I'm not fat enough to sit in a stool that hard. I'm guessing this is the interrogator. Tall, thin, black clothes, sober expression, face pale. Time to become invisible.
Who are you?
Thomas More, sir. I'm a student at law. And I'm here to be the scribe? My father sent me. He is Sir John Moore. He's a judge, sir. If you need a reference...
Yes, yes, very good. You'll do. Never mind who your father is. This is the Bishop of Cambrai.
A large man, clearly one who enjoys his dinner. Resplendent in his colourful robes, he appears to glide on casters. He appears upholstered rather than dressed.
Ambassador for the Duchess of Burgundy. Please, Your Grace, be seated.
Thank you. And he's the one all the fuss is about. Ragged, unkempt, a cut on his neck, 2 guards, heavy chains.
Put the prisoner over there.
And then the interrogator turns to me.
Whatever is said and done in this room will be properly recorded.
Yes, sir.
Write the prisoner down as the prisoner.
Yes, sir.
Give him no other title.
No, sir.
Prisoner, what is your name?
Richard.
Richard.
Yes.
You're sure about that? Think carefully before you answer.
Oh, well, if I'm to think carefully, to speak the truth, and we must speak the truth for there are witnesses and a scribe present, I would have to call myself Richard Plantagenet, the 4th of England, Duke of York, Earl Marshal of England, Duke of Norfolk, Earl of Warenne and of Nottingham, Lord of Seagrave, Mowbray, and Gower. Do you need me to repeat any of that?
No. Thank you.
And since when have you been referring to yourself by those titles?
Since my first marriage to Anne, Duchess of Mowbray, alas, now dead.
And when did she die?
I can't remember.
You can't remember when your wife died?
About 1482, I think. I didn't pay much attention. I was only 9 years old.
The bishop stifles a snort of laughter. Your pardon, just a little cough.
So your name is Richard?
Yes.
Guards, bring the robes.
The prison guards stagger under the weight of fabulous golden robes. They struggle to hold them up in front of the prisoner.
Are these your clothes?
Yes.
Put them on that chair. The story goes that they cost as much as a king's robes.
Even a robe can become a legend.
And cloth of gold.
Yes.
Only a king has the right to wear cloth of gold.
I know.
But wearing cloth of gold doesn't bestow kingship.
I should hope not.
Have your supporters been following you or your fine clothes?
You can mock me if you like. I don't care. We are sensory creatures, my lord. And anyway, it is not only my clothes. They say they see in my face the image of the last rightful king of England, my father, Edward IV.
A person might use a portrait as a model.
If he had one, he might. Or he might not need it. I grant you a person might cut his hair this way or that to suggest a resemblance, but the features of my face, they are God-given.
There's a sound from behind the screen. The prisoner glances over. I glance over. The bishop glances over. Not the interrogator. He keeps going.
Quel philosophe.
J'ai lu la philosophie, pas assez.
Is French your mother tongue?
No.
Your accent is perfect.
Thank you.
As if it were your mother tongue.
Anyone who travels and who has a good ear can become as skilled as I with a little trouble. I have a very good ear. I can hear something behind that screen, can I not? A rat, perhaps? My brother believed there were rats in these rooms.
This is all show and no substance.
Fright of my life. From behind the screen, a woman appears, small, very fierce-looking, and evidently important because the bishop leaps to his feet. Lady Margaret, a most welcome surprise. He bows. She nods. I get up because everybody's doing it. But the prisoner remains seated.
I used to make fun of him being afraid about the rats. I should not have done that.
Take him to his cell. Guards! Bishop Cambrai,
Lady Margaret.
if you would please excuse us.
Of course. The bishop leaves, and I scramble to get my papers together and follow him, but they carry on, as if I wasn't there. And then it's too late to attract notice by leaving. I press myself against the wall and quieten my breath. This will become the way I hear things they wouldn't dream of saying if they were aware of my existence.
Must we really go through this charade?
Since Cambrai has come just in time for our visit from the Spanish ambassador, yes, we must.
A courtesy visit, he said.
There is no such thing where he's concerned.
His arrival could not be less fortuitous. I had thought to deal with the prisoner before de Puebla arrived.
Spain surely won't give us the arrogant girl for our grandson. If they get any suspicion, we're not secure.
Will you send for the king?
No. No, if he comes, it will give Europe the message that he thinks the Pretender is a serious threat. I will attend in his place.
Gone. I've never seen her before, but I know Lady Margaret Beaufort is a power in the land. They say the king hardly sneezes without consulting her. So why was she hiding behind the screen? And at last they return. Lady Margaret takes the best chair, the one with the padding and the armrests. The bishop bows to her, the interrogator bows to her, and I bow to her. Imitation is the best way to protect yourself in such a situation. The prisoner does not bow. He is barely sitting in his chair when the questioning begins again.
I don't believe your claim to be a prince. I don't believe you have ever been in the Tower in your life until you were brought here last night. You have attracted attention and even some belief in your imposture. You have treasonably referred to your king as your sworn enemy, and you have created a sense of unease around you which is unhealthy. But we live in a country which respects the law, and for the sake of the peace we desire for our country, you shall speak, and you shall be heard. Prove your claim, if you can.
The law, you say?
Of course.
The prisoner feels his neck as he speaks, probing it where the cut lies livid red.
Things must have changed then. The manner of my arrest was hardly respectful.
The bishop looks distinctly concerned for the prisoner. He seems about to speak, but he doesn't get the chance.
Enough of this play acting. You are not Richard. You're not a duke. You're not of the House of York. You're not even English. You are a puppet and a pawn and a very clever actor, and you were given us a spellbinding performance, but now the performance is over. I will expose you for the impostor you are, and you will pay the price for what you have done.
Do you think I'm afraid of you? After all I've suffered and all that my uncle could do, ask me your questions. You trick me if you can, but remember that I am Richard, Duke of York, the true son and heir of Edward IV of blessed memory, and I am your king. And I say before these witnesses that when this is over, you will kneel to Richard IV and beg for mercy.
I will never kneel to a traitor.
I hope you haven't caught your cough from me, Lady Margaret.
You were saying?
Can you prove that you are who you say you are?
Could you do that?
My identity is not in doubt.
But if it was?
Answer the question.
How should I answer, when I have spent most of my life pretending to be someone else?
1483. King Edward dies. What happens to Richard?
On April the 9th, I went with my mother to take sanctuary in Westminster Abbey.
And your brother went with you?
No. My uncle had taken him to the Tower to prepare for his coronation.
When did you join him?
For a few weeks I stayed quietly with my mother and sisters. Then one day, my Uncle Richard came for me.
Does it not surprise you that your mother should let you go?
I'm more surprised that you should think that she had a choice. Uncle Richard embraced me and gave me warm words and said he would keep me safe. Then I was taken by boat to the Tower.
And how was your brother when you found him?
He wasn't very happy. He had just seen the execution of my father's closest friend.
Your brother saw the execution?
The west windows of the royal apartments looked over Tower Green, which is where Lord Hastings was beheaded.
So, your life in the Tower?
We had some familiar attendants, men we'd known at our father's court. We played in the grounds.
You were able to play outdoors?
For a time.
And apart from these attendants, did you see anyone else?
Our Uncle Richard, he came to visit. We played chess. He brought us books.
And what did you talk about? Did your uncle say why you were being kept in the Tower?
He said nothing about that.
So, here you are, having a nice little holiday and not feeling very frightened or concerned.
One day, when we weren't looking, they took away our attendants. We were playing. One moment they were there, watching over us. Next moment they had gone.
And then?
They moved us. They put us somewhere further inside the Tower. We weren't allowed outside anymore, and we were kept locked up at all times.
Your brother was inclined to be melancholy, was he not?
It was no wonder. He had a disease in his jaw. It was rotting. His gums were a raw mass of weeping sores, and And from the day they took our protectors away, he became convinced we were going to die. He prayed most of the time.
Did anyone come to see you?
The prisoner hesitates. I look up, grateful for a pause. My hand aches from so much writing. He's shaking his head. But then...
There was a doctor. He had been in our father's court. He came to see Edward to see if he could help.
What was his name?
I don't recall. Something to do with silver. He was an astrologer and alchemist too, one of my father's close advisors.
What was he like?
He was a kind man. He seemed the last bit of safety, the last link with the world we had known. When he stopped coming, even I got scared.
And yet you can't recall his name?
His name wasn't the most important thing about him, not to a frightened child.
The interrogator seems to react to this, as if he's affected by the prisoner's words. But he rallies.
So on this night that you did not die, tell me about your escape. Tell me by what miracle Richard of York now honours us with his presence when most of those who knew him thought he had been dead these 16 years.
We went to bed. We slept. I remember half waking up and seeing two men standing by my brother's bed. I was used to seeing guards in the room, so I didn't pay attention.
Guards inside the room at night?
Yes. They would check on us several times most nights. And anyway, I often had vivid dreams, especially since we'd been in the tower. I thought I must be dreaming. I went back to sleep. And when I woke up, I was in a boat.
In a boat?
Yes.
Did you ask what had happened to your brother?
Of course. I was told that he was dead, and I must forget who I was. I never saw him again.
So you slept through the murder of your own brother?
Yes, it seems I did.
When had the doctor stopped coming?
I don't remember exactly. A week, 2 weeks.
So your brother had to endure pain without help at the end of his life?
Yes. Argentine. I remember his name now, John Argentine.
Your father's close advisor?
Yes.
And the man who made you feel safe when you were most in danger?
Yes.
How strange that you don't recognize me.
You?
It's clear that Lady Margaret and the bishop knew perfectly well the name of the interrogator. I didn't know, of course. But for the prisoner, this was a complete shock.
Yes.
I don't believe it.
You didn't know me.
You didn't know me either.
That's because you're an imposter. You didn't recognize me because you've never set eyes on me in your entire miserable life.
No, it's because I thought you must be dead. It's hard to recognize someone when you think they've been dead for years. Hard for you as for me.
I would know the princes anywhere. I was their doctor. I was there for them every day of their lives.
Except when we needed you most. You left us to die.
How dare you? I love those children as if they were my own. You are an insult to their memory, and I will hear no more. You will answer the charges of imposture, sedition, and treason. And if you cannot, then look to your prayers, and may the Lord have mercy on you.
Lady Margaret and the bishop leave after Dr. Argentine, and the prisoner and I are left looking at each other for a few moments.
If a scribe doesn't know what's true and what isn't, how shall he make a record?
Before I can recover from the surprise at being spoken to and answer him,
Take the prisoner to his cell.
he is led away again. It was a good question, though. I seize the moment and run to find the privy and rest my pen and my work-weary hand.
Ave Maria, gratia plena, Dominus tecum, benedicta tu in mulieribus, et benedictus fructus ventris tui, Sancta Maria. Elizabeth, my dear.
You wanted to see me, but since I find you at your prayers...
No, come in. I do want to see you. Dr. Argentine intends to question the prisoner in detail about childhood memories. He asked Henry if he thought you'd be prepared to sit in the room.
He did what?
He may have fooled all sorts of people, but he cannot fool a sister. You can expose him as a fraud more convincingly than anyone alive.
Why hasn't Henry discussed this with me?
Because he asked me to discuss it with you instead.
Henry is away.
We spoke of it before he left.
So you and Dr. Argentine and my husband all talked about this among yourselves long before anyone spoke to me.
We had hoped it wouldn't be necessary. We didn't want to ask you until we were sure.
I will not be forced into the presence of a man who violates the memory of my brothers.
Elizabeth.
It's enough that they were murdered by my uncle.
Consider your responsibility as queen.
Are you suggesting that you know where my responsibility lies better than I do? I will have no part of this.
The Spanish ambassador is arriving today to discuss the marriage contract between the Infanta and my grandson.
My son?
Yes, your son. Perhaps you'd like to tell Spain that the Tudors are not safe. That will be de Puebla now.
El tiempo en este país es una afrenta a Dios.
He's saying, the weather in this country is an affront to God. The arrival of the Spanish ambassador sends Dr. Argentine, the bishop, the prisoner, and me back into the interrogation room. He waits until we're all there before he makes his entrance. And what an entrance. He spent more on his outfit than everyone else put together. Feathers and silk and pearls and a fantastical hat. And as for his shoes, he clearly wants us to notice them. He stands in the middle of the room, one foot in front, then the other as he bows. A fairly plain bow to Dr. Argentine, an extra flourish for the bishop.
Bishop Cambrai.
He looks closely at the prisoner and nods, and flicks the merest glance at me.
May I introduce myself? Dr. Rodrigo González de Puebla, ambassador to Ferdinand and Isabella of Spain, Castile and Aragon. I feel sure that my colleague Bishop Cambrai will be able to inform me of events to date. However, I do wish to stress that this imposture is not the matter I am here to discuss, so the sooner it is concluded, the better. Negociación con el inglés siempre me da dolor.
He says, negotiating with the English gives me such a pain in the neck, and my bedroom stinks of fox. He's just got to his place and is poised to sit when Lady Margaret and the Queen come in.
Lady Margaret, Your Grace.
Ambassador, you are most welcome. Please do sit down.
Everyone sits, except the prisoner. He stands as if transfixed. Dr. Argentine turns to him.
This is the Queen and the sister.
I know who she is.
She will know when you are telling the truth and when you are not. So begin. Tell us your earliest memories of your sister.
The day I got married, I was only just 4. My bride was 5. My sister had to dress me. She was really more like a mother to me. The Queen was so often away somewhere else. Then Uncle Richard put me on a horse at the jousting after the ceremony, and my sister was very cross because I got marks on my white robes. But she didn't say anything. She was too afraid of Uncle Richard. We were all afraid of him, even when he seemed in a good mood, maybe especially then.
What do you remember of normal family life?
Normal?
The things that only family or people who knew you very well would remember.
There was no normal. Do you want to know what it was like living in our family? Up in our schoolroom, our mother was telling us stories of how she was descended from Melusine, the serpent woman. We had to pretend we didn't think she was completely mad. Meanwhile, along the hall in his bedroom, the king would be having a private party. Might be one or more of the king's 3 regular mistresses and any number of passing fancies of either sex. He'd try anything at least once. He had an adventurous palate and a huge appetite. If it was alive, he'd fuck it, and if it was dead, he'd eat it.
The Queen gasps. We all gasp. She stands. Everyone else stands. She sits down again, and we follow suit. Did we hear him say that?
Is Your Grace quite well?
Why would I not be?
Should I write it down? Dr. Argentine seizes the advantage.
How can you claim to be who you say you are, yet show such disrespect to the Queen by speaking so insultingly of her family?
I mean no disrespect, and I show none. I'm simply telling the truth, and by telling the truth, I prove who I am.
Your version of the truth?
Well, that's all any of us have, surely. Ask the scribe.
I don't need to ask the scribe. Carry on.
The king kept a feather on the table and in his bedchamber at all times. That way he could stuff himself until he could eat no more and then tickle his tonsils to make himself sick. And then he would eat again.
You make him sound like a monster. Grotesque, repellent.
Oh, no, he wasn't. Or at any rate, whatever he was, it didn't seem to put anyone off. Everyone loved him. The effect he'd have by just walking into a room, you'd see it. He would win a heart with one look. He could seduce anyone, and they all came back for more.
He pauses, and I look up, and I follow his gaze. He's looking at the Queen's face, and she's almost smiling, but still not looking at him. By this time, I have no idea what to write.
While our parents are distracted doing whatever they're doing, Uncle Richard is starting to make eyes at Elizabeth. And somewhere downstairs there's Uncle Clarence drowning head down in a cask of wine. None of this is what most people would call normal.
There are those who say King Edward gave the order for your Uncle Clarence's death.
There were others who said it was my mother, and yet others who said it was something to do with the occult arts. That's your department, of course.
The bishop coughs again.
So sorry.
Some water, perhaps, Bishop?
No, thank you.
You seem to take it very lightly, this death in your close family.
We got so used to it. At Christmas, no one ever knew how many places to lay at table. You couldn't keep track of who had or hadn't been done away with by someone or other until they'd started arriving. But I remember that last family Christmas. My sister in her fine French clothes. Our father in the best of moods because she was beautiful. She was half of the alliance he had worked for so long. She was the Queen of France in waiting, Madame la Dauphine. It was the nearest we got to a happy family Christmas, in my life anyway. And then a messenger came from Louis of France to say that he was backing out. My sister had been jilted. It was the beginning of the end for our father. I saw him for the first time unable to withstand a blow.
And the prisoner pauses again. And I follow his gaze again and see that the Queen has gone very still, almost as if she's holding her breath. He talks to her now, as if they were alone in the room.
Ma pauvre Madame la Dauphine. I could see how much you were hurt. Everyone else was running around worrying about the effect on the king. You were left alone. I came and found you. When I thought of it since, I realized you must have felt it was somehow your fault.
Enough. Any of this you could have imagined if you knew a bit of history and had half a brain in your head. You speak well, as if you understood what it is to be a woman, a pawn in someone else's game. I have had plenty of that. I will not be your pawn, whoever you are. Yes, I was ignored, and yes, my brother Richard was the only one who noticed, who thought of me at all. But if you were my brother, you would know better than to say such things in company, because you would know that such memories are still hurtful. Don't you dare speak to me of him. Don't speak to me at all.
As she goes towards the door, Lady Margaret stands, makes to accompany her, and the Queen stops and without even turning her head, throws back at her.
I would like some time alone.
As you wish.
I will come back. We are not finished with this.
What are we to make of events thus far? Who is the master here? Or mistress, come to that? Since the women are of force indeed, the red and the white. I would not stand between them when their bloods are up. On the one hand, Elizabeth of York, daughter, sister, niece, wife, and, all being well for the Tudors, one day mother to kings of England. If I was prosecuting this case, and I could have only one witness, it would be her. There is no one better qualified to test the prisoner's claim. On the other hand, we have Margaret Beaufort. There's a survivor, if you like. Married at 12, widowed and a mother at 13. Ambitious all her life to get her son on the throne of England. So why does it seem that the prisoner is the one who holds the room? Why do I feel that he is the calm at the center of the storm? Is he playing a game of his own making? Or is he a toy being used by others in a game entirely of their devising? When it comes to events which turn the tide of history, is any individual likely to determine the outcome? Or should we rather believe in God, fate, the divine right of kings, the preeminence of evidence, of common sense? Questions, questions, but as yet, no answers. The interrogation room is filling up again. The prisoner, Margaret Beaufort, Dr. Argentine, the ambassadors, all here waiting. Queen Elizabeth enters last, slows her step as she walks past the prisoner's chair, appears to look more than in passing at his neck, where the wound still gapes. Then she sits, and we can all sit. And then we begin.
You were telling us about the Christmas of 1482.
My father never recovered from Louis's insult. He died 4 months later. It was the end of family life for us.
Your feelings about the loss?
His death wasn't the worst thing. It was leaving my sister. When they took me away, I didn't understand. They never meant me to see her again. I didn't say goodbye. I don't think I had the chance. But it was my mother who let me go.
Dr. Argentine notices a flicker of discomfiture crossing the Queen's face. I notice him noticing, and so does the bishop.
I think you said before that she had little choice, that her refusal might have endangered her life and the lives of her other children.
I did say that. I've even wondered if when she let me go to Uncle Richard, she was making a compact with the devil in him. Spare the girls, and you can have the boys.
No mother would do that.
Some mothers might have done.
Well, I have never had to make such a choice.
Quite.
As I said before, my mother had little room for choice anyway.
But some might say I did.
What do you mean?
Uncle Richard was known for his roving eye. If I had done more to please him, if I had been more like my father, as you describe him, who knows? I might have saved my brothers.
Do you think your brothers would have wanted that?
I've never heard how my brothers spent their last days after they stopped being seen. No one has ever known, or admitted knowing. Tell me.
He doesn't know anything about it.
We might as well hear the next part of the story. Do go on.
I've already said much of what I remember.
Perhaps you can remember something more specific.
Edward was king, after all, though uncrowned. Since he'd been in the Tower, he had already been working as the king, signing charters and letters, and the date had been set for his coronation. We were both looking forward to the ceremony. He'd been measured for his robes. I had my own special robes for the day.
I'm sensing something. I don't know what. I keep scribing, but in the end I have to glance up, and I see the Queen's face. She's not looking at the prisoner. She's looking up towards a patch of light on the wall.
Uncle Richard said they brought 300 oxen to London to slaughter for the feast. I did wonder why no one from the family except Uncle Richard had come to see us. But there were the robes, and I thought that meant that we would see you all again. And Edward would be crowned, and we would leave the Tower.
By now, I'm not the only one looking at the Queen.
Your Grace?
I thought I saw...
Saw what, Your Grace?
nothing. A trick of the light. Continue.
The day of the coronation dawned. We got dressed. We waited, and no one came. I remember the sun moving round the room, and Edward sitting there all dressed up, ready to be crowned king. And he never said a word. He didn't have to. No one came, which meant that one day when someone did come for us, it wouldn't be to take us to a coronation ceremony.
You didn't have to be there to be able to tell us this. Anyone with a vivid imagination...
Let him speak.
We knew as well as anyone what happens to a country after 50 years of war. And we could see how Uncle Richard looked at us after our father had died. The insult of handing over all that power to a 12-year-old. So we lived waiting for the door to open, not knowing when it would happen. It was hard enough for me, but what must it have been like for our sister? Our own mother proposing to give her away to Henry Tudor, a Lancastrian, a man with his eye on her brother's throne. That must have told her that her mother believed we were dead. Your brother had a birthmark on his back, didn't he?
The prisoner gets up, walks over to the light. She follows. He raises his shirt. She looks at his lower back. She straightens up and for the first time looks him in the face.
I don't think it's the same mark as the one my brother had.
The Queen does not acknowledge him. We should send him to the Tower and be done with him.
Guards.
If you will allow me to have an opinion.
Of course, Your Grace.
This is a matter for our higher authority. For the removal of doubt, you should involve the King in this matter.
Surely we have spent more than enough time already.
Since so many crowned heads of Europe believe in this man and think he is indeed my brother, we must demonstrate that we take their belief very seriously.
Not so seriously as to trouble the King.
So as to dismiss it. Please send for my husband, Dr. Argentine.
Your Grace.
At last. I'm going to get fed. I'm in a dining room with the ambassadors, but I sit apart, pretending to be very busy with my papers. The bishop tucks in with enthusiasm. Dr. Rodrigo Gonzalez de Puebla is much more finicky.
It seems the Tudors can't even control the quarrels between their women.
Mind you, he does put forward a good case, this pretender, whoever he is.
The Queen does not appear convinced.
It's hard to read the Queen.
I doubt the wisdom of forming an alliance with such people, or giving up our princess into their influence. She has been brought up properly. Is he with you?
Who?
Mr. Mouse, over there in the corner.
He means me. The bishop shakes his head.
No, not with me.
Then who is he?
I don't know.
Do you think he's one of Henry's spies?
Henry is the most suspicious monarch in Europe. He has spies everywhere.
Are you one yourself?
I think Henry's spies are perhaps less obvious.
King Edward IV was hung like a horse, so they say.
Do they?
Does the son usually inherit that from his father?
It's possible.
Hey, what does the silent one think? Are you taking all this down?
And I am so startled at being spoken to by a man so exotic, a man with such astonishing shoes, that instead of answering him like a normal, albeit expensively educated young man, I run away.
Te vas, correr pequeño ratón.
He's saying, "Go on, run, little mouse, run." And I run. I don't think about where I'm running, but when I stop, I realize that I'm somewhere I haven't been before. I lean against a wall. I can't hear anything except my own harsh breath, nor feel anything except the thumping of my own heart in my chest. And then, as it stills, I hear a door and footsteps, and how I wish I was safely back in chambers. I see a shadow, a woman's shadow. She's holding a candle.
Hello? Who's there? Oh, it's the scribe. What are you doing here?
Catching my breath, Your Grace.
I see.
I'm sorry.
No need. When you've caught it, please to remember that your job is to write down what you hear in the room where Dr. Argentine is asking questions.
Yes, Your Grace.
Nothing else.
No, Your Grace.
No supposition.
No, Your Grace.
Good.
She sounds like my father. But history doesn't work like that. No one, not I, not even my father, can witness everything that happens. History is sometimes about filling in where we don't know, where we can only imagine. Sometimes the events that matter most, that have most bearing on how the world turns, happen out of sight, and we have to imagine. I see the Queen stop outside a heavy door. I see a guard open it with a large black key. I see Queen Elizabeth go into the room. And I know it's the room where the prisoner is being kept, because I hear before the door closes.
If you are my brother, who is it that haunts me?
And the door closes, and the key turns, and I hear no more. So I may imagine.
I knew you would come.
My brothers haunt me. I see them everywhere. I hear them, and now you come. You come in here, calling yourself Richard.
I don't mean to cause you pain.
I more than anyone alive would want to believe your story. And how can I?
You used to sing to me. Lolly, lolly, my little child.
Stop it.
He haunts me too. That's why I came back.
How did you get that wound?
They weren't very gentle when they brought me in. It's nothing.
Barbarians.
I'm sure they mean well.
Yet may thou have thy will.
A well-known song.
Yes.
You have what most women desire.
Do I?
A husband, security, position.
Security. There is no such thing.
You're Queen of England. You have 2 sons, 2 heirs to the throne. And yet it seems to me you're not very happy.
I think I'm happier than you.
Do you?
It must have been such a lonely life. Homeless, wandering from country to country. You seem to me to be one of the loneliest people in the world. Whoever you are.
Oh, I'm not lonely. I have the love of a beautiful woman. My wife.
You have a wife?
Yes.
What's her name?
Catherine. She's Scottish.
James of Scotland's kinswoman.
Yes.
I see. Do you love her?
I do. I miss her. Not in the way I miss you, Elizabeth.
Marriage can be lonely for some.
What is he like?
Henry. Sometimes I think I'm invisible to him.
You can never be invisible.
And sometimes I think I have only ever been a means to an end. A way to end a war.
A noble part to play.
And my life and my heart are of no account.
I didn't say that.
He's away so much. He tells me nothing. I'm afraid to ask.
Don't be afraid. You must not live in fear.
There has always been fear. Always that I can only be close with my children. And one day, they will be grown up. And they will be men. And I will be the mother they have to deal with, not the mother they love.
Henry loves his mother, I'm told.
If you can call it love. I don't know what to call it. It divides him from himself, from us. I will never want my children to feel for me that way. If it was alive, he'd fuck it. And if it was dead, he'd eat it. I can't believe you said that. No one's allowed to talk like that anymore. Most of the time, it's almost as if my family never existed.
Why?
Henry says we were licentious. He made me feel I should be ashamed of them.
And are you?
I'm only ashamed if I let him make me forget who I am. They have sent for Henry.
At your insistence?
Yes.
They must be worried then.
He won't let you live.
Well, I'm not going to run away.
You don't know him. He can be so cold. Sometimes he is capable of acts I cannot understand.
I will not live in fear.
There he is now.
I can tell it's the king. You couldn't miss it. What with the clatter of hooves, the fanfare, the ambassadors hurrying to be near the door, de Puebla preparing his most extravagant physical manifestations of respect. The king seems intent on getting past the pantomime as quickly as he can.
Thank you so much. Yes.
Your Grace?
Dr. Argentine gives a very slight bow and holds out a small dish, following the king as he walks on, taking off his cloak as he goes.
What is it, Dr. Argentine?
If your Grace will permit, I think a stool sample...
For the love of God.
Your Grace, the auspices...
Damn the auspices!
I pray you think of all we have ever said and thought about the ill omens that unfairly attended upon your Grace's accession to the throne.
You mean the curse, Argentine? Why can't you speak plainly?
Your Grace, the stars must be set fair if we are to appease wrongs done by others and visited upon your reign.
And you need a stool sample to get it right.
For the sake of peace and the stability of the House of Tudor.
A stool sample for the sake of the stability of the House of Tudor.
Your Grace.
Haven't you got some entrails that would do instead?
And the country yearns for peace as much as you do.
The king looks as though he's going to explode with rage, but then...
Of course. Come along.
The trials of kingship weighing upon him, he strides off with Dr. Argentine in pursuit.
Travelling always bungs me up.
I am sorry for your Grace's discomfort. Thank you, Your Grace.
You're welcome. We have to deal with him this time, John.
I know.
My mother is a proud woman and very capable.
Indeed she is.
Fearfully capable. She likes to manage things herself, so I find myself wondering how bad things must be since she was moved to send for me.
Someone else moved her, Your Grace.
Really? My mother? Who managed that?
I hesitate to say, Your Grace.
Why?
There was something of an atmosphere during the interrogation.
What sort of atmosphere?
It isn't straightforward.
You're being very evasive, John. I've had word from my informants on the continent. Something that should make a difference.
Your Grace?
But if you're not interested...
Oh, I am always interested, Your Grace.
What do you mean by atmosphere?
Henry, I'm glad to see you safely arrived.
Mother, it's a while since you've helped me with my motions.
I think we need to talk about your wife.
Ah.
The Spanish will not give us the Infanta if they get even the slightest whiff of weakness.
Your Excellency?
We would like to know when Your Grace might find it convenient to resume the interrogation.
We will consult with the auspices, then we will be able to say.
We have been very patient.
You have, Your Excellency.
And we are very tired.
All in good time.
And the good time would be when? On what does it depend? On this dish?
Give them an answer, Dr. Argentine.
If you would, Dr. Argentine, I must insist.
Midnight.
Midnight.
Just before.
Puto pais barbaro.
I'm going to find my wife.
Henry.
Don't keep them waiting past midnight, Dr. Argentine.
Your Grace?
Elizabeth, they tell me you visited the prisoner in his cell.
The spies have been busy.
You knew you would be seen. Elizabeth, you are the Queen of England.
Yes, I am the Queen.
How has this impostor so affected you?
I married a pretender. Our alliance is based on pretense. Why should you wonder that another pretender should hold some interest for me?
So, you have some interest.
Interest is not the same as believing his story.
What then?
He reminds me of my father. He reminds me of myself.
What does that mean?
His story.
His ridiculous imposture.
His story reminds me that I am a daughter of York. He reminds me that I am more than a pawn in someone else's game.
You will not visit him again.
I will if I choose to.
You should remember you are speaking to the king.
And what of my husband?
Your king, your husband, either. Both. The same. I will have your obedience.
You will not.
If I have to tear it from you.
And if you use your strength to force my submission, if you do that, I swear I will be avenged.
By whom, Elizabeth? By the prisoner?
What kind of king subdues a woman by force, Henry?
You surely don't believe he is your brother?
Has anyone said that I do?
No.
Perhaps if you had asked me, consulted me, before obliging me to deal with the prisoner.
I wasn't here.
Yet you managed to ask your mother.
She can be trying. I know.
I might be more compliant.
I don't want you to be compliant.
Next time, if you want me to be more compliant, if you want to know what I think, if you want me to face a man who claims to be my brother, Henry, try asking me yourself.
Your Grace?
Time to go, Your Grace.
You don't say much, do you?
Were you speaking to me?
Unlike the others. I'd be interested to know what you were thinking while the others talk, before they join us.
What I'm thinking?
You're keeping the record, aren't you? I don't know why they pay you so little attention. How do you come to be the one who writes them into history? Are you a scribe?
I'm a lawyer.
A lawyer?
Training to be one.
So why aren't you preparing a case, one way or the other?
I'm not required to do that.
You only ever do what you're required to do.
My father is a very forceful man.
So was mine.
Your father?
Since you are a lawyer, I won't ask you who you think I am. That would be unfair and possibly dangerous for you. So instead, let's talk about kings. Kingship.
Sir?
Should a king be guided by religion, by Almighty God, by divine law, or by suspicion? What do you think?
I cannot say.
Don't tell me. Your father discourages you from thinking.
He does.
We're all at the mercy of someone or something. For you, until you become your own man, it's your father. Meanwhile, for us, here we are, waiting and waiting because somebody's stools say the interrogation can only resume at midnight. Something to tell your grandchildren, I suppose.
When we get any grandchildren.
If we live that long.
You could have got away.
Perhaps.
What drives a man to stay near danger when he could walk free?
It might be his need to claim himself, to be himself, in plain sight of all. No more hiding.
Then perhaps to lose himself again, if he should lose his life.
And it might be his sense of what is right.
To risk your life? And all you hold dear?
And his conscience. Without that, what are we?
Too late. The moment has passed. The cast of this drama file back into the interrogation room. Bishop Cambrai, Dr. de Puebla, Dr. Argentine, Margaret Beaufort, the Queen. She slows her step, glances up towards where a patch of moonlight plays on the wall. I follow her gaze, see something, an outline. I can't tell what it is, but it's a shape. And she looks, frowns, looks intently, but only very briefly at the prisoner, then goes to her seat. We wait. De Puebla yawns very loudly. He's making a point. At last the king arrives. Everyone stands except for the prisoner. Argentine bows to the king, who inclines his head. You may begin. And I return to my desk.
It's an extraordinary, affecting story that you tell. The miracle of survival for one of those innocent children. What news that would be for every man, woman, and child in this country, tormented for 16 long years by the mystery of what befell the princes in the tower. I congratulate you. I wish I had your skill in storytelling and persuasion, but I don't. Still, I would like to try as best I can to tell you a different story. You must forgive me if I lack your skill at embroidery. Picture, if you will, a family home in the town of Tournai in Flanders. A little boy with his mother. A man comes, talks to the mother, takes the child by the hand, and leads him away. The little boy from Tournai was called Perkin Warbeck. We have here a portrait of his mother.
She's a pretty woman.
I'm sure any mother would wish her son to say that of her, especially when he hasn't seen her for many years and when he only writes to ask her for money. We also have a letter intercepted on its way from England to Flanders. The letter, scribe.
I take him the letter, and with more ostentation than is needful, he reads.
Mother, as humbly as I can, I commend myself to you. And may it please you to know that by fortune, as part of their scheming, certain Englishmen made me take it upon myself. I'm sure you recognize him, but
That is not how I would write to my mother.
really? That I was the son of King Edward of England, called his second son, Richard, Duke of York. I now find myself in such trouble that if you are not in this hour a good mother to me, I will find myself in great danger, and so on.
I don't know who wrote that, but it wasn't me. It's not my handwriting either.
We wanted to bring your mother here, and indeed she was on her way, eager no doubt to see her son who had been so long away from home. But alas, she died on the way.
That is unfortunate.
And convenient for you.
I'm sorry for her family.
I'm sure you are. Her husband, the boatman, Jehan Warbeck, told us that his son Perkin has a birthmark on his back, rather like the one we saw in this room yesterday, and how his son disappeared just at the time when you began your travel.
It is my turn to congratulate you. You must be very proud of your spies, and especially proud of their gift for imaginative fiction.
You stayed with cousins in Antwerp so you could learn Flemish to add to your native French. You are a gifted linguist.
I've lived abroad most of my life. You flatter me.
I think not. And I have already acknowledged my respect for your persuasiveness, superficial though it may be, and your silver tongue.
It seems, however, that you have small respect for the judgment of the kings and queens, the dukes and duchesses, who are pleased to call me cousin. They believe my story.
Your story is not believed, but used.
The Duchess of Burgundy acknowledged me as her only nephew.
Of course she did. Poor lonely Duchess, crazed by grief and childlessness and the despair of the loser. You are her creation.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Dr. Argentine darts a shifty glance at the king, who nods. They're up to something. The bishop and de Puebla see it too. Everyone wakes up a bit.
I heard that the Duchess of Burgundy had embraced you not only as her nephew, but as her son.
Yes, she did.
You can't be everybody's son. Even you can only have one father and one mother.
She adopted me as her son.
Oh, but I had heard also that you are indeed her son, not by adoption or even by legend, but truly and by birth. And I find myself wondering who the father might be.
Is this relevant, Dr. Argentine?
And I understand that the Bishop of Cambrai, the ambassador of Burgundy, confessor to the Duchess, appeared just in time when you were apprehended the other night.
Yes, fortunately for me.
It almost seemed as if he had been keeping an eye on you, as befits someone who cares for you like a father.
That is ridiculous.
Is it? Perhaps this whole affair is not just about pretensions to the throne of England and the desperation of the last representative of the House of York. Some say the Duchess of Burgundy and the bishop have a common secret. Some say that the secret they share is the existence and concealment by disguise of a child who, for the sake of discretion, started life as Perkin Warbeck, with a whole legend of his birth and growing up in Flanders. This gave way to the legend of the risen prince only later, when the Duchess decided to use her son as the pawn in her own hopeless game.
This is outrageous. It is calumny. I can hardly believe that I am hearing this.
Excellent. A lascivious bishop.
But I can believe it. I expect nothing better from a man who is paid to pander to the neuroses of a usurper.
You call me a usurper? You, a boatman's son or the bastard child of a bishop?
And what are you? You're descended from the illegitimate offspring of the third son of Edward III. You're a bastard descendant of a bastard. How many people died, and how many were betrayed to clear your path? How can you look at your sons when you think of those two innocent children who were murdered, or so you thought, and whose deaths were never avenged? That is why your reign is cursed, and that's why I call you a usurper.
That is enough!
I have heard enough of this. My country will not contemplate any kind of relationship with a ruling family that cannot even govern itself. And if anyone should ever insult me, as my colleague has just been insulted, then I would not show his forbearance. There must be some standard of courtesy, even in England. I shall retire.
Guards, take the prisoner to his cell.
She leaves. The bishop and Dr. Argentine follow her, and I watch the man who just called the king a bastard being led away with his hands still chained together. I'm alone in the room. On the wall, I see the light and shadows make an outline of a small form, like a robe for a child. I blink. It's gone.
I'm going to bed.
I don't know how you can think of sleep.
Thank you, Mother.
You wouldn't listen to me anyway. Good night.
If the ambassadors believe him...
Make them believe you. You have no right to be weak now.
No right?
If blood has been spilled, if friends have been betrayed, don't you think you owe it to those who died and those who have been betrayed to hold your course? Or do you mean to tell me that you now believe that he is the child who died?
I don't know, but the truth is, he's right. The death of the princes was the murder of innocents, and my reign is cursed by it.
You didn't wish for the death of the princes. This is the heart of the night we have lived through for so long. This is when the crucible blackens and all seems dark. All seems lost. And yet the gold only comes when you have gone through that desolation. The light is only light because the darkness has passed. And it will not pass without you go through it. Without that, nothing happens. Nothing real. Nothing enduring. This is your test. He is your test. He has seen your weakness. He is using it to hypnotize you. He is not real, Henry, and you are not cursed. You have to apologize to Cambrai.
I am the king. I don't apologize.
You should have spoken to me before you decided to offend.
I can judge for myself, Mother.
Henry.
You want me to act like a king, and you want me to do what you say. I may not be a clever man, Mother. You've told me so often enough. And I may only be on the throne because you have put me there, but even so, I know that a king cannot always be at his mother's command.
You're tired.
Yes, I am tired. And I want to sleep in my own bed with a wife who looks kindly on me. How has this man so won your mind and heart? How has he seduced you?
He has not seduced me.
Would you really have me surrender the throne? What would become of Arthur and Henry then?
I haven't said you should do that.
But you're unsettled. If you were ever to begin to believe him...
If?
You would have to choose your brother, if that's who he is, or your sons.
You don't mention my husband.
I don't believe you love him.
Love was never part of the arrangement between us, Henry. Even though I might have loved you, I might have wanted to love someone, even someone who is on my own brother's throne, if I had thought for just one day that I was loved in return.
Elizabeth, love cannot be our first concern.
I know that's what you think.
It doesn't mean I don't feel love for you. And you don't know what I think.
Oh, I believe I do. You think what your mother wants you to think.
Do you suppose I want my mother looking over my shoulder all the time? Advising, cajoling, rebuking?
It would seem
Please,
so.
if you will listen, I'm going to try for once to tell you what's in my heart. Even if I might want to give up the crown, what have my own desires got to do with it? I am just as much a prisoner as the man who says he is your brother. When I was a child, I never thought of being king. Why would I? I grew up so far down the line to the throne. Even so, I was hounded from place to place, hardly saw my mother. You know that. Then by the time I was 12, after the long wars, suddenly I was fourth in line. I still could have lived quietly, where no one knew much about me. I might have been happy living like that. Instead, the princes disappeared and Richard took the throne. And until he should have a son, I was next after him. But for me, it was as if even the air we breathed was tainted by the loss of your brothers. I didn't want to inherit that. I didn't have the stomach, the ambition, though I knew my mother did. All those deaths. All that blood and sorrow and loss and grief and all the wrongs done, all those black wrongs. Do you think any of that sits easy? Do you think it's been easy since, with new pretenders every year and always, that feeling that my reign is haunted and cursed, and I am cursed because your brothers disappeared? Although they have gone, they are with me every day, every step, every decision I make, every child's face that I see. Every way I look, they are there. In your face, most of all, I see them. Where I wish I could see love. I know you didn't want to marry me. If I could have this marriage any other way, if I knew how to make you love me...
You can't make someone love you.
If just by walking away we could find that other way... If I could take you and our son...
But you can't. You won't. You are the king first.
Elizabeth.
Everything else second. Suppose the prisoner were not a pretender. I would have a brother, and you would have a chance.
I would have to leave. Or die.
So, early morning, and I'm the first to arrive back in the interrogation room. I wonder at the sound of a bird singing outside, a sign that the world carries on, regardless of the momentous events taking place within these walls. I'm standing under the window when the guards bring in the prisoner. The man who says he's the king looks well rested and very calm. He sits at ease in his chair, smiles at me.
Good morning, Thomas More.
Good morning.
You look a bit ragged.
You don't. You called the king a bastard.
I did, didn't I? I wish there was a better word for it.
For being born out of wedlock.
For all that I think he is. Something less crude. Here we go.
Everyone else arrives at the same time. Cambrai still smarting from the insult. De Puebla looking decidedly as if he's eager for the next bit of scandal. Dr. Argentine giving nothing away, his face set and closed, takes a seat. So, he's going to be an observer this time. The Queen and the King look like a couple who haven't slept well. They walk carefully apart, as if the last thing they want to do is touch each other. Margaret Beaufort, cold, controlled, gives her son a stern look, and he scowls at her. But it's clear even to me that his next move is an act of obedience to her will.
First, I want to apologize for any lack of respect shown to the Ambassador of Burgundy, the Bishop of Cambrai, and for any lack of respect we may have shown towards Dr. Rodrigo González de Puebla.
The ambassadors give very slight bows of acknowledgement. No elaborations this time from Spain. The king turns his attention to the prisoner.
A random likeness, some costly clothes, a good hairdresser. Do you think that's all there is to being a king?
Of course not.
Because if you do, you are a fool. For all your cunning, you're all show and no substance. The Irish have followed your fine gold robes.
The Irish were not just following my robes.
They're not the most sophisticated people in the world. They don't even speak proper English. They had to read your message in the rain and the stars.
You employ an astrologer yourself. Does that mean you are not sophisticated?
It means I am more sophisticated in my use of astrology.
And of course, in some ways, the Irish have much in common with the Welsh. They really don't speak English, and they're very unpolished, as you would know, being of Welsh ancestry. What about my memories? How could I know those things I have told you?
You could have borrowed or invented those.
Borrowed from whom?
From the Duchess of Burgundy. She was King Edward's sister.
Which is why it is so significant that she recognized me.
You remember too well and too much. It's all too like a lesson you've learned, a performance. And your performance is too perfect. The whole of Europe is playing the same game with you. Anyone who has ever wanted to be a thorn in my side has used you. They're not your friends.
James of Scotland is my true friend. He gave me his kinswoman in marriage.
Yes. Lovely Catherine. And do you think she would have married you if she had any choice?
Choice in marriage is not given to us all.
He looks pointedly at the Queen. This is not lost on the King.
If she knew who you really are.
Perhaps you should ask her.
I will. After I've dealt with you. And that won't take long. There is no reason why I shouldn't hang you here and now for treason. You're a fake. And you're a puppet, Perkin Warbeck. You're a nobody from Tournai.
My name is not Perkin Warbeck. And your only claim is through my sister and perhaps your mother. And you've never made a decision in your life without asking her advice. If anyone's a puppet, it's you.
I'll kill you!
Olé, olé! What is Scaramouche?
My lord, Henry!
Go on, Henry. You kill me. You can do that if you want to, if you can bring yourself to disobey your mother.
I will have you!
My lord, please show restraint.
You can take my life, but that won't be the end of me because I have a child coming. A son of York, and the people will flock to him and to the Yorkist banner when I am gone.
After that shocking revelation, Henry retreats. The prisoner is led away, and the ambassadors and I adjourn to the dining room, where they chat like old friends.
Well, that was most entertaining. Like a bullfight, I shouldn't wonder. All that charging and prancing.
He's much less skillful than bullfighting, I promise you.
Families.
Always interesting.
And dangerous. And still, no more clarity.
The prisoner seems more sophisticated than the king. More plausible even, but that doesn't mean he's of royal blood.
And then perhaps a question arises as to what makes a king.
That is a radical thought, Bishop.
So many kings have come from the wrong side of the sheets, after all. Blood and the bloodline are not necessarily everything. And then look at the Ottomans.
Why should I look at the Ottomans?
You've surely dealt with them. What they do is assess the sons of the ruler and choose the one most worthy and most fit to govern. The best politician, the one most likely to guarantee stability.
And the others?
They kill them.
Who are you suggesting we kill?
Please, no one. I am thinking philosophically.
Oh, and of course it has nothing to do with any fatherly interest.
Of course.
Nor because you actually know who the prisoner is.
Quite so.
But then, do you know who you are? Forgive me for asking.
Sometimes I believe I do. When I do, it's because I'm not thinking about it. And when I do think about it, so much of knowing myself is from memory.
If the past is a memory, it partakes of a dream. If it is a dream, then it is an illusion.
Who said that?
I read it somewhere. I don't remember.
If the past is an illusion, then perhaps we need to go to the place of his dreams.
So go to the past?
No. I mean enter the world. The physical world where it happened. If it happened. Stones that are still there, physically there, in the present, where it has tangible reality.
You mean the exact same rooms in the tower?
Yes.
I don't see what difference it will make, or why the king would agree.
It wasn't much of an apology he gave us.
That is true. And now he's attacking the prisoner.
We can ask the king. In fact, we can tell him. He should show us proper respect, and if we need clarification and certainty, then he must enable us to find it.
Vamos!
The same room where the princes were kept.
Yes, my lord.
To what purpose?
We feel disturbed at the lack of clarity and direction in this process.
If I am to go back to my royal highnesses and tell them I am finally and completely convinced, they will want to know what has convinced me.
It's just a room. I don't see what difference it will make.
He seems very comfortable in the room where he has been questioned for so long, my lord. He seems to behave as if it was his throne room, and he is granting us all an audience. I would like to see what he does and how he seems when he is taken away from there.
I don't know.
You need not tell him which room it is, or give him the real reason for the...
He's a good actor.
It's not just who someone is or how plausible they are. England is a mess of open wounds, raw, still bleeding. He walks into those wounds and all our fears. He disturbs the conscience of this country. He has almost become its conscience.
We have seen some extraordinary behavior in the past few days. If we cannot be reassured, then we will have to take our leave. And I will have to tell my Royal Highnesses why I am returning early, without discussing a match for their daughter. That is for you to decide.
We will await your answer, my lord.
Don't do it, Henry. If you agree, he will bewitch you. He'll bewitch everybody. We might as well give up now. Tell him, John.
I beg your pardon, my lady, but I cannot do that.
What? What is this?
As the bishop said, it's my conscience. I can't pretend I don't hear it. Not now, not anymore. I want to know what happened to those little boys.
Surely you don't believe Perkin Warbeck can tell you?
I don't know.
Dr. Argentine, if I may say...
Please, excuse me, my lady.
Henry.
I will take my own counsel. Thank you, Mother.
I don't know if I want to go into the room where the princes are kept. Fear hangs in the darkness here, flies around these walls like bats swooping in the darkness. Be still. Be quiet, and you will feel the ghosts of those who have died here, or who disappeared from within these walls, never to be seen again. They are here still. I feel them. Murder, they whisper. It was murder, 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 murder.
Not this one.
We are processing behind the prisoner, all of us, following, slowing when he slows, starting again when he starts.
Do you think he's playing with us?
I don't know. His face is very solemn for a joker.
The bishop is right. The prisoner's expression is very serious. He's concentrating. He moves like an animal trying to find a place it knows.
Here.
You're sure?
Yes.
Guards, the key.
The room is bare, abandoned, derelict. It seems no living thing has breathed in here for many, many years. And suddenly here we all are, the king and queen, the two ambassadors, Dr. Argentine and the prisoner, and me. The prisoner stands very still, looking around the room as if he's gathering pieces from his memory. I find a place to perch so I can keep taking notes.
Edward's bed was over here. From the moment we were shown into this room, Edward became convinced we were going to die. He would sit in his bed for hours at a time, or kneel beside it, praying all the time, praying. Answer him, oh God, I would pray. I had no prayers of my own. There was a table here, and chairs, my bed here. The door was kept locked.
Did you have visitors?
Well, our uncle brought books. I asked him when we would see our mother.
What did he say?
Soon. That's all he said. He brought a chess set. Once he played with me.
But you weren't allowed out anymore?
No. And Edward became more and more morose. And his jaw, the inside of his mouth was festering. The flesh was being eaten away. He could hardly open his mouth sometimes. Most nights he would moan in agony for hours. You didn't come here, did you, Dr. Argentine?
No, not after the princes were moved.
The prisoner walks to a wall, puts his hand on it, turns and looks back into the room, at a particular spot.
And my bed was there.
So did you see no one else, apart from your Uncle Richard, while you were here?
We were left on our own most of the time. A woman came with food, but they didn't spend time with us. There was one who always watched them, but who never showed her own face. I don't know who she was. Perhaps Lady Margaret can tell us. You were close to my Uncle Richard at the time.
Not really.
But you were here at court, weren't you? Perhaps you had some idea of what might happen to us.
I wasn't in London at the time. I had to stay away. It was dangerous.
The king looks at his mother closely, but her face gives no clues.
Did they feed you well?
Often they would give us broth. I loathed it. Edward ate it. You see, there wasn't much he could eat that was solid. But he got weaker. I should have been the weaker one. I was the one who wouldn't eat. I begged them for something else sometimes when it was broth, but they didn't take any notice.
So you didn't eat the broth and your brother did?
That's right.
And he grew weaker even though he was eating and you were not?
Yes.
You did say he was very ill already.
This was a different thing. He got sick to his stomach, and I didn't get sick. I didn't eat the broth. Who would have poisoned us? Who could have?
Nobody poisoned the princess.
The night the men came, our supper was better than usual. Yes, well, I remember they brought wine for us that night. More often it was milk or beer. I got into bed, and Edward knelt down. Oh, Jesus, most profound abyss of mercy, I beseech you by the depths of your wounds, which pierced your flesh to the heart and very marrow of your bones, draw me out from the depths of sin into which I have sunk, and hide me deep in your wounds from the face of your anger, Lord, until the judgment is past.
That is a terrible prayer. And from a child. Who taught him that?
We went to sleep. I woke up and saw that there were men in the room who did figures.
So you were awake after all?
Yes, I'm awake, not dreaming. Two of them, standing by Edward's bed, a pillow over his face. He struggles in the bed, they're holding him down. He calls to me, Richard, help me, Richard. I can't move, I can't help him.
What is it?
He was there. Uncle Richard. He was standing in the doorway. He was here.
Nobody poisoned the princes. Richard was away touring the country after his coronation.
No, he was here.
He distanced himself. He went away.
My Lord Bishop, Your Excellency Dr. de Puebla, whoever ordered our death, my uncle was there. And somebody or something made them stop before they killed me too.
Why would they have stopped? Once they had killed Edward and knew you had seen it.
Watching a child struggle for breath, ignoring his cries, holding him down as the life went out of him. Who could do that twice? Even if he was the one who gave the order for me to be killed, yet it seems my uncle saved me. Because I was a second son of a king, like him. Because I bore his name.
He was not a man of sentiment.
Perhaps it was mercy. If my brother was already dying, Edward was so weak. His name was Edward. He was a king, and he died in this room.
I realize that I have stopped writing. King Henry looks at his mother, but she can't meet his gaze. The king nods to the guards. The prisoner is led away. As he walks past the queen, she speaks to him.
Where were the robes for the coronation?
They were never in here. That was in another room, not so deep in the tower. Why do you want to know?
I'm just curious. I'm sorry.
You have nothing to be sorry for.
I'll stay a few moments. I want to think about my brother, Edward.
He looks at her. She holds the look. Steady, clear. He turns away and we follow him out of the room. There was something in that room that I didn't want to be near. I felt it, and it unnerved me. And even as we walked away along the passage towards the stone stairs, I could have sworn that I heard someone saying her name. But I wouldn't stay in there a moment longer than I had to.
Elizabeth? Hello?
You?
Yes.
It can't be.
It's rude to stare. But your father had no manners, so I suppose you wouldn't know any better. He's very handsome, isn't he?
Who?
Your brother. My nephew.
If I believe my eyes, then I must be going mad.
You're not mad.
Uncle Richard.
Yes.
I'm leaving.
We don't have long. They'll come looking for you. Seize this moment, Elizabeth.
I think I must be mad. I must be mad. I think the prisoner is my brother, and I think you are my Uncle Richard, and you are both supposed to be dead. Both of you.
Let me help you.
You murdered my brother.
Shh. When did you become so willful?
It helps if you're a woman in our family. Otherwise, you are lost.
You loved your brother Richard so much.
I remember the day he was born. I was 7 years old. My mother was like an animal, beached, bellowing like some huge-bellied thing, calling on obscure deities.
While upstairs, your father, my brother, screwed his way to oblivion.
Her hair was wild and sweaty. She shouted and swore, called curses on her husband's head, on her baby fighting his way into the world, on me. They tried to make me leave, but my mother said, "Let her stay." She said, between the surges of pain, "Let her stay. She should know what it's like. Her term will come soon enough." Then out he came, screaming, kicking, his face squashed and red and fierce with indignation. And my mother, our mother, swore at him and collapsed and asked for wine, and he was covered in slime. But he could yell. And I loved him from his first lusty, bawling breath. I saw that she did not love him, and so I did. My love rushed in where hers was absent. I became his little mother. I was 7 years old.
And now you lie each night with the man who sits on your other brother's throne.
When I go to sleep, I dream of him, and he is always smiling. But in the daytime, there is a hollow in my heart, and it weighs heavy.
I know.
Do you?
Imagine that you have a decision to make. Imagine this decision will decide the fate of many people, of a nation, a continent. You have it in your power to make a choice that will change the map of the world. Think of the good you could do with it. Make it safe. Make the teeming, wild world safe with that power. Bring peace to the people who long for it. But there's a catch. Well, there would be, wouldn't there? Everything has a price. Nothing in heaven or earth is free.
You sound like my husband.
Funny thing, that. To go back to that choice. However clear it is when you rationalize, talk in terms of the fate of nations, it's different when in the other scale is not another continent or another kingdom, but 2 children, little boys, voices not yet broken, stabilize a kingdom or save the children. Perhaps your husband would understand.
What?
I'm telling you that we are born to care not for our own concerns, but for the fate of a nation, a people.
Or my brother.
If he is your brother.
In the night, I hear them calling to me. "Why didn't you come when we cried last night?" they say. I haven't seen them for 16 years, and still they cry.
And we all come to it in the end. Death. Or at least it comes to us.
My uncle once said to me that I must always be strong, because only the strong survive. I don't think I'm strong.
I think you must be.
My Uncle Richard.
That's me.
You were kind sometimes.
Good. I'm glad you remember that. I'm likely to be blamed for everything, you know. It will take a long time for the truth to come clear, if it ever does, but we have to put up with these things.
These things?
Being blamed.
Being murdered?
That as well, for some of us. They'll be wondering where you've got to.
They won't. They'll hardly notice I've gone.
Self-pity ill becomes you, my dear.
So is he my brother?
Wrong question, Elizabeth.
Uncle? Uncle Richard?
My father said, write what you hear, not what you think. You're not being paid to think. How can I not think? when I see in just 2 days the fall of what might have been a dynasty. The king has not the stomach for the fight. The queen wants her brother more than she wants to be queen, and more than she wants her sons to inherit the throne. Dr. Argentine is struggling with his conscience. The ambassadors can only wait upon events as they unfold, and meanwhile they will pay court to the Lady Catherine as one who might, before the night is over, become the queen in waiting. So who is left? The prisoner has convinced or confused everyone.
I don't know where that little escapade has taken us. Yes, he's given yet another mesmerizing performance.
Mother, stop. Why do people tell lies, Mother?
To protect a loved one, perhaps.
At the time of the plot to rescue the princes, where did you say you were?
I had to hide. Richard would have killed me without stopping to think about it.
But you did come to London, and you did come to court.
Only when Richard insisted.
Telling lies means you have to have a good memory. It's easier to remember if you just tell the truth, isn't it? So when you were in London, you were sometimes in court. And you must have been in the company of the king some of the time. Why are you so vague on the details?
It's a long time ago.
The thing is, all those years of being apart, growing up in Brittany, never knowing where you were, meant that I would never ask or wonder because I was used to not knowing. But now I want to know. What is it you're not telling me, Mother?
Nothing. There's nothing to tell.
Where were you? Did you ever come here with King Richard?
Of course I didn't.
Were you working with him?
Henry!
Because only Edward ate the broth, and only he got sick. Richard didn't eat the broth, and the princes stood in your path as much as Richard did himself.
The prisoner said...
But if he isn't the prince, Mother, what does it matter what he said? And if the prisoner is the prince, and if he's here because he didn't eat the broth, we have to ask, who gave them the broth and why?
The prince's uncle.
Suppose Richard did spare one of the children. Suppose he found it in himself to have compassion for the child. Unlike whoever it was who was giving him the broth, whoever that was must have found it very frustrating when the king spared one of the children.
I wouldn't know.
Wouldn't you, Mother?
It's all fanciful nonsense anyway.
But you were here with kindly Uncle Richard.
And what if I was?
And you've known all along that one of the princes is, in all likelihood, still alive. Somehow, somewhere.
No.
You're my mother. And the grandmother of my children, and I don't know you at all.
You said yourself, we were always apart so much.
Yes, and I've always believed it was for my good. I believed you really wanted to be with me, and you thought I was better off, safer, living apart from you.
And that is the truth.
And I believed you loved me, your child, more than anything or anyone. No!
Yes! Henry.
Don't say it was for me, or tell me how much you love me, Mother. You did it all for yourself. And you enjoyed doing it.
What do you think I might have done, Henry?
I don't know. And I don't know what you were going through all those years when I was growing up, and you were never there. But one thing that's becoming clear to me is that more than you wanted to be with me as a child, more than you wanted peace for this country, you wanted to be Mother of the King. And you would stop at nothing. And have pity for no one, not even a child. To think I have trusted you with my own children.
Whatever you think of me, Henry, the people want peace.
How can lasting peace be built on the murder of those children? Everything you have done has been for your own purpose, not for my good. And everything you have done has been cursed. You brought a curse on me! And on my reign, I could almost wish the prisoner to be who he says he is.
Why do you laugh?
It's him, isn't it? It is. And you knew from the start.
There's no proof.
So what? The point is that he makes us see what we try so hard not to see. I am only king because the people believe that 2 little boys were murdered somewhere in this building. The people will want to believe him. He's all the proof they will ever need that one of the princes lived.
Henry.
My lady?
Oh, yes. Dr. Argentine.
The Lady Catherine Gordon has just arrived.
Thank you.
The ambassadors are on their way to greet her.
Please give her a comfortable room, but make sure she's kept away from the prisoner. And from the king.
My lady, the prisoner...
I will tell the prisoner that his wife is here.
Very good, my lady. I'll go to greet Lady Catherine now.
John.
My lady?
Your loyalty has sometimes deserved better from me.
And my first loyalty is to my God.
Of course.
What? Are you?
I'm sorry to wake you. Here, have some water.
What time is it?
I don't know. Well, you've won. You've got what you wanted. I have to admire your achievement.
If this is some game...
Oh, no. I mean it. It's just I hadn't realized quite how much planning had gone into this, or just how clever you'd been. Your strategy has worked brilliantly from first to last. It's only now I see it. You planned your own arrest. You made sure Cambrai would come in time to save you. You've unsettled the people of England in a time of peace, when peace was all they wanted. You have the ambassadors eating out of your hand. Argentine wants to believe in you. And you've turned my son's wife against him.
You give me far too much credit.
Oh, no. Not enough, I'm sure. And of course, you've made my son hate me.
I didn't make your son hate you. I can't carry all the blame for that.
You must be longing to see your wife and tell her what's happened. Come, I'll take you up to her.
Where? Surely she's not down there.
So, you thought of everything. Almost. But not quite. Clever as you are, there's one possibility you missed.
I want to see my wife.
No, not yet. You'll come with me first. This way.
What trick is this?
Something that concerns you and your brother. Do you want to know what it is?
I can't see.
Here, have the candle. I know my way. Look. You see them?
Who are they?
Ask them.
Who are you?
Try again.
What is your name? Good God. Why are they chained?
It makes them feel safe.
How long have they been here?
What if I told you they've been here for 16 years? How old do you think they are?
I can't tell.
Look at those covers.
Rags.
Yes, rags. But they are cloth of gold. Only a king can wear cloth of gold, as you know. Have a look. And they're rather small. Made for a coronation, perhaps. Shall we look for a birthmark on his back?
Stop it. Leave him alone. Who are they?
They are my proof that you are not Richard of York.
They are not the princes.
Can you prove that?
Who cut out their tongues?
Only one had his tongue cut out. Cut out, and then cauterized. I'll show you.
Stop. Oh no, just stop it.
His brother saw, so I was told. He swallowed his own tongue, so the same wouldn't happen to him. Anyway, it wasn't me who cut out his tongue.
I don't believe you. How could a mother become such a monster?
I learned it from men. Oh yes, I learned cruelty from men. I learned from men, and from all the Yorkists I ever knew, that to be soft is to be brutalized. But then you have to be brutal to be a king. You can't imagine how brutal.
I need to see my wife. Now.
You have more power than you know.
What do you mean?
You make everyone believe you are the prince. Or you make them want to believe it. That's why you are so dangerous. Because you inspire that wish. You should have stayed quiet. You should have become a courtier. But you can choose to end the war. The war can end with you, and the curse can end with me. Come. But before you meet your wife, I must tell you that if you persist with your claim to the crown, I'll bring those creatures into the light.
You wouldn't dare.
I would. And your reign, if it ever began, would be just as cursed as Henry's. Because just like your uncle...
My uncle? So you do believe me?
For 16 years, I have known this day would come. I knew you would return.
Everyone knows that walls have ears and walls hold secrets, but I can't make sense of what these walls are whispering to me. How do you know a prince is a prince? I heard the ambassadors debating this very point. Does the master or mistress of strategy deserve to take the prize for the good of the nation, for the safety of the realm? Kingdoms are so often founded on war, murder, duplicity, and betrayal.
Thomas.
Father, you're back.
You are wandering. This is clearly a case where even if you ask a question, you should never, ever offer an answer. It's a good trick, that one. Fools them every time. You'd be wise to remember it in court, or find another profession.
Yes, Father.
Or ask the jury.
I don't know who that is, or where they are.
The jury will be whoever reads the record you're making, Thomas.
Oh, do you think anyone will read it?
Oh.
I mean, all the people here seem perfectly able to make up their own minds.
In the future. It's a record for the future.
An incomplete record.
That's history for you.
On which the fate of the land may depend.
So ask them. They find it flattering to be asked.
Can flattery go hand in hand with justice?
Is that a question, Thomas?
Yes, Father.
I take it then you won't be expecting an answer.
No, Father.
Or believing any answer that might be offered.
No, Father.
Just ask the questions.
Yes, Father.
Explore the questions, probe the questions, pursue the questions in detail, but do not answer them.
Yes, Father.
Well, get on with it.
So, members of the jury, if we assume that what we have here is a matter of strategy, we might find some purpose in determining, that is to say, exploring the strategies. I mean, the questions. Thus, first question. Did Richard of York kill both his nephews? And is the prisoner a brilliant impersonator trained by the Duchess of Burgundy who wants to bring back the Yorkists and destroy the infant Tudor dynasty? Second question. Was King Richard unable to bring himself to kill the princes, so instead, out of moral cowardice, he cut out their tongues, locked them up, and made of them beasts with no voice? Did Margaret Beaufort know and keep quiet about it, because this move brought her son Henry 2 steps nearer to the throne? Third question. Did Richard and Margaret work together to get rid of the princes? And did Richard decide to spare one of them? So he's one prince wicked, one prince weak. Did Margaret Beaufort curse his weakness, then find a couple of hapless and innocent men, take out their tongues, and store them for future use when she needs them for blackmail? There are no doubt several other possible questions.
And they're all wrong.
Father.
The questions. You're asking the wrong question.
But these are the questions that people will ask.
The only question that needs to be answered is, what will the prisoner decide to do?
Then so be it.
What?
I will not be held to ransom by you and your treachery. I will not play your game or collude with your barbaric scheming. Bring them before the king. Bring them before the country, before the world. Bring them into the light. They are not the princes.
You're bluffing.
I was never more serious. I came for my murdered brother. I came because it is his right and my right that have been betrayed. I came because the truth is sacred, and the people have a need to know the truth. You can't prove those wretches are the princes. No one would believe you.
I think they would. They'd know I wouldn't draw such censure on my own head unless it was really true.
You said it yourself. You are already lost. Your son is lost to you, and not just your son. I say again, no one will believe you, so do your worst. Now, I want to go to my wife.
Oh, yes. Your wife. I'd forgotten about her. Here.
This door?
Yes. Go on.
Catherine? This is not my wife's room. They're children.
My little grandsons. Your sister's children. You haven't seen them before, have you?
How old are they?
12 and 9. When I see them sleeping, what comes into my mind is the image of those two little princes. Here. In this tower. Almost exactly the same age as these two. Of course, you realize the next thing you'll have to do is kill them.
I will not.
If you don't, they'll come back for you. For you and for your child.
You judge everyone by your own standards.
All little princes grow up. That's what happens if you spare a king's son. He returns, as you have returned. You could kill them now. Everyone thinks you're locked up. You'd be the last person your sister would suspect. I can lend you the knife if you like. Here.
No.
I mean not to kill you, but to give you the chance to act as you must. Go on. If you want to be the king.
I don't believe even you would collude in the murder of your own grandchildren.
That's not the point. The point is, here, in this moment, have you the nerve? Have you more nerve than your uncle to secure the future, the throne for your child, and peace for your people? Are you strong enough and brave enough to pay the price, even in your nephew's blood? Have you got the courage to be a king?
I know what you're doing. And it won't work. Because when I look at them, what I see is my brother Edward. I see a child who was murdered. More than for any other reason, I came back to get justice for him. And nothing you can do will turn me from that course.
You must see I'm right. If you press your claim, in the midst of the struggle that would ensue, you would have to murder your own nephews, just like your uncle. Repeat the cycle. Avenge the death of a brother, restore a bloodline to the throne, gain a kingdom, destroy the peace, and lose your soul. Just like your uncle.
I am not like my uncle.
If you say so.
And he didn't murder me.
As good as.
And a king does not murder children.
I would have killed you both. I told him.
You told him?
Of course. I was there, with my hood over my face, Richard. I brought the broth. I did my part.
You. Of course, it was you.
Oh, I broke my own heart long ago, and I would have killed you both. But he was too weak.
When you kneel down to pray, you must pray with no belief. Oh, look at them. Arthur. Henry. The sleep of the innocent. And what of my child?
Will come to no harm. I will guarantee it.
I don't believe you.
On the lives and souls of my grandsons, I swear.
And my wife?
She and your son or daughter will be members of the royal household for the rest of their lives, and I shall say so to the ambassadors.
Damn you.
I have damned myself without any help from you. But you can die knowing at least some people will believe you're the lost prince. Innocent as an angel.
Die as a pretender.
For your wife and child. For peace.
I will see my sister first.
No.
Or I will hold to my claim.
I hear your wife has arrived.
They won't let me see her.
They?
The king.
I suppose you want me to recognize you.
No, I don't.
Really?
Really.
Why not?
Because it doesn't matter.
You don't want to be talking to me anyway.
I do.
I'm a mad woman. I should have saved my brothers. I could have saved them.
You were a child, and you had no power.
My mother might have said otherwise.
I heard her talking to her brother-in-law.
Uncle Richard?
Uncle Richard, yes. He said, I'll take the boys, or I'll take all of them. You choose.
I don't believe you. You're just saying that.
She was terrified. She wasn't a brave woman, or even particularly clever. She just did her best.
No, she didn't. She was neglectful and selfish.
I just wanted to say that sometimes when people seem to desert you, there may be reasons they can't explain.
You're saying goodbye. You can't let her do this.
It's my own decision.
I don't want to lose you again. I'll tell Henry. I can't let you just go.
You must.
How can you bear it?
Because you have given me back my name. Come now, Elizabeth. Here I go, then.
Thank you.
For what?
For laying the ghosts.
That was the easy part.
Richard. Richard. What will they do?
When I come into the interrogation room, I find the prisoner standing alone, and he looks different. I can't say quite how, except there is such a sorrow on his face. It seems he is about to speak to me, but then the ambassadors appear in the doorway and he says nothing. It's the same people as before, except this time there's Catherine, the prisoner's wife. He tries to go to her, but she is taken away to sit with Lady Margaret. When the king comes in, he looks at the prisoner, then very deliberately and taking his time, he walks to where Catherine is sitting, bows before her, takes her hand and kisses it.
Lady Catherine, you are most welcome here.
He ignores his mother and takes his seat. Then he turns to the prisoner.
Begin.
Dr. Argentine hands the prisoner a piece of paper. He can't meet his gaze, but the prisoner touches his arm and smiles as he turns to the paper in his hand. The Queen looks on the point of tears. The King tries to take her hand, but she moves her hand away and focuses her gaze on the prisoner as he begins to read. And as he reads, I stop writing.
First be it known that I was born in the town of Tournai in Flanders, and my father's name is called John Warbeck, which said John Warbeck was controller of the said town of Tournai. And my mother's name is Catherine de Faro, and one of my grandfathers upon my father's side was named Derek Warbeck, who died.
The Queen rises from her seat and leaves the room. After a pause, The prisoner continues.
And my grandfather upon my mother's side was called Peter de Faro.
Don't think, my father said. You're not paid to think. Write what you hear. I want to ask, who is the prince in this case? And how do you know how to recognize him? And who will live to tell the tale? And who will dare to tell the truth?
Hey, what is Perkin Warbeck? It's not even a real name, is it? Why did he do it?
Well, perhaps we'll never know.
Or perhaps those who know will never say.
What will our friend over there write about it, do you think?
He means me.
He'll write what he's told to write. Or perhaps he'll throw it on the fire once we have gone.
So history will not tell the true story that we've seen.
Oh, you think we've seen the true story?
Who knows?
Anyway, history will say what someone decides it should say. Or what Mr. Moore remembers when he's older and braver.
And for once, and at last, the Spanish ambassador speaks kindly to me.
Ser valiente, ratoncito.
Be brave, little mouse. I will try to be. When I go to visit the prisoner, I don't know what to say. So I hover, and he helps me.
So, Thomas More, what will become of you?
I was going to be a lawyer.
Oh.
His face is red, bruised. It hurts him to laugh. What did they do to your face?
They blurred my likeness to King Edward.
I'm sorry.
What for?
I don't know. You're young.
Like you?
Yes.
You said I was going to be a lawyer.
I suppose I did.
So what does the lawyer in you make of all this?
I don't know. My father said...
What did he say?
He said, I can't afford to have a conscience.
But I would ask you how you can afford not to have a conscience.
You're right.
I hope so. I would like someone to give a message to my son when he's old enough. Would you do that for me, Thomas More?
Of course.
Say to him, remember me. Remember me by my own name. You tell my son.
I will. Tell me.
Yes, Thomas More.
Tell me if it's true. And there's a pause while he decides what to say and what not to say.
I am my father's son, but I am not my uncle's nephew.
Henry and Elizabeth stay on their thrones. De Puebla and Cambrai pay their respects. Lady Margaret shuts herself away, praying, perhaps. Who knows? And I return to my little desk at the Inns of Court. Of course, what I have written here may never be read. Or if it is read, it may never be believed. That is the nature of history, and history is written by the victors.
Just write what happened. The facts. You could do a lot worse, Thomas.
The Bishop of Cambrai took a copy of the confession home to the Duchess of Burgundy.
So she will have to concede.
In public, she will have to concede. Dr. de Puebla agreed a contract of marriage between Prince Arthur of England and the Infanta, Catherine of Aragon.
Good.
Lady Catherine of Scotland and her son were invited to live at court.
And the pretender was hung. Good, good.
And it's still not clear whether the prince is...
Thomas!
I was, at one time, intending to take holy orders. But then I decided I wanted to work in the secular world and to have influence there. My father said if I ever wanted to have any influence, I would have to learn to be less wedded to my principles.
Your principles, Thomas. You can't afford to have principles.
But, Father, my conscience...
Your conscience will be the death of you, Thomas.
Yes, Father. I feel very old. My father doesn't know everything. If the prisoner had become Richard IV, what a different future would unfold. No more Tudors. Think of that. On the day of the execution, a crowd assembled to watch. They didn't make any noise. You could hear what was happening. The man they hanged as Perkin Warbeck died a commoner. And one day, when his son is old enough, I shall have a message for him. I shall tell him, your father may have been hung as a pretender, and the history books may write him down as such. But his name was Richard, and he was more like a prince than any man I have ever met, or am ever likely to meet, as long as I live.